The first sign wasn't the microphone. It was the look on his face when he stood up from his table. That slow, deliberate movement, like he'd been waiting for this moment all night. The reception hall was warm, candlelight, soft music bleeding into laughter. My wife, was across the room, smiling at something her sister whispered. She hadn't seen him yet. I had. My brother adjusted his jacket as if he belonged at the center of everything. As if he hadn't spent years reminding my fiancée she was replaceable. As if he hadn't called her names when no one was listening. As if I hadn't told him, quietly, clearly, why he would never stand beside me as best man. His fingers brushed the microphone stand. My chest didn't tighten. It went cold. Security noticed my hand lift before I realized I'd moved. But that moment, the grab, that wasn't the beginning. It was the end of something that had been rotting for years. People think abuse announces itself loudly. It doesn't. It whispers. It laughs. It calls itself jokes. My brother was excellent at that. He'd lean in close to my fiancée at family dinners, voice low enough that only she could hear. "You're lucky he settled. You know he had better options. You don't really fit in here." She told me pieces at first, carefully, like she was afraid. I'd think less of her for noticing. I noticed everything. The way she went quiet after seeing his name pop up in the family group chat. The way he never said her name, only her. The way he looked disappointed when she didn't flinch anymore. When I told him he wouldn't be my best man, he smiled. That's what convinced me I'd made the right choice. He didn't argue, didn't yell, didn't ask why. He just said, "It's your wedding," and started planning something else. The weeks before the wedding felt staged, too calm. He texted more than usual, asked questions he'd never cared about. Seating arrangements, speeches, who had access to what. I answered politely, briefly. I watched instead. I saw him corner a cousin whispering, saw him glance at my wife when he thought I wasn't looking, saw the satisfaction flicker when she avoided his eyes. I checked the venue contract myself, added security without telling anyone why. Gave them one instruction. If he touches a microphone, you move. No drama, no scene, just removal. Still, part of me hoped I was wrong, that this was paranoia, old history poisoning a new beginning. But abusers don't stop when they lose control. They escalate. When he reached for the mic, time stretched thin. I imagined the words he'd practiced, the stories he'd twist, the laughter he'd try to earn at her expense. I didn't look at him when security took his arm. I looked at her. She was confused. Then she understood. Our eyes met. She didn't ask me to stop it. That was everything. As he was pulled away, he finally spoke, loud enough for everyone. "You think you won?" I didn't respond, because he still thought this was about humiliation. He had no idea what I'd already uncovered. He thought the wedding was the stage. That was his mistake. The truth had surfaced months earlier, quietly, the way real damage always does. It started with my wife crying in the shower. Not sobbing, just standing there too long, water running cold. When I asked, she said nothing. When I didn't push, she told me everything. The late-night messages disguised as concern. The warnings about me. The slow erosion dressed up as protection. And the lie he'd been feeding her for years. That I had once confided doubts about marrying her. He forged intimacy by pretending to be my voice. I didn't confront him. I archived everything. Screenshots, timestamps, voice notes he didn't know were recorded. When she started keeping her phone in her pocket instead of her purse, I cross-checked stories with relatives. Patterns emerged. Women he'd done this to before, quietly, successfully. He didn't want her. He wanted control over me. The wedding was just his deadline. After security removed him, the night continued. Music resumed. People laughed again. My wife danced barefoot, finally unafraid. I waited. 3 days later, I went to his apartment alone. No anger, no raised voice. I placed my phone on the table between us and pressed play. He listened. The room changed. His confidence collapsed inward, like a structure built on sand. "That's not—" I held up a finger. Silence. I slid printed transcripts across the table. Highlighted lines, dates, his words reframed without his charm to protect them. You told her I was unsure, I said. Calm, measured. You told her she'd be abandoned. You told her you were the only one being honest. His mouth opened, closed. I stood. I didn't remove you from the wedding to punish you, I said. I removed you because you were a liability. That word broke him. Not brother. Not family. Liability. Ooh, I filed no charges. I didn't need to. The evidence made its way through the family like a controlled burn. Screenshots don't argue. Timelines don't defend themselves. Invitations stopped arriving for him. Calls went unanswered. Stories didn't land anymore. The attention he'd fed on vanished. Ooh. Sometimes people ask if I regret not letting him speak. I don't, because silence was the loudest consequence he'd ever faced. I didn't destroy him. I simply stepped aside and let the truth finish what he started. My wife sleeps peacefully now. I do too. Not because justice was loud, but because it was precise. And because the last thing my brother ever lost was access to my life.